I think that if you find a partner who shares equally in the domestic load of the household, you will want to them more.
Yeah, what you're saying is if you see Matt with a bucket and a mop, he doesn't need to fill that with water because you'll fill it yourself.
That's a wet ass puss. Yes, 100%.
That is a wet ass mop.
If he has a bucket and a mop, other things are getting wet around this place.
And a wet ass Laura.
Sorry, could you please clean this up? Laura's made a mess on the floor. Guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Laura.
I'm Brittany.
Britt, I wanted to tell you something because we steamrolled past it and none of us, not a single person who works at Life Uncut even realized this milestone.
Laura Byrne.
Yes.
You make that sound like we have a staff of like 400. No one at Life Uncut. It's you, me, Delilah, and producer Keeshia. And well, now we have one new addition, but we haven't introduced you to them yet.
When you say like we haven't introduced you to him yet, his name's Jono. He's here in the room right now. We have our first man working for Life Uncut. So now he knows the ins and outs of the female mind.
And then we can get the male perspective. We can bounce straight off him. It's brilliant. So welcome to Life Uncut, Jono. I'm sure you guys will slowly meet him over the episodes.
When we say the male perspective, I like it that the one singular man becomes the voice for all men. You are representative of your entire gender now, just so you know, Jono.
We're like, we did a sample of the men at work, one person. The results were...
This is all the opinions that we care about. Okay, no, the thing that we steam...
I think I know what you're going to say.
I will try and get it out, but continue. Let's play charades instead.
I reckon that you and I are telepathic because we've spent so much time together. I think you are going to say we forgot to mention that we hit our 500th episode.
Bow, bow, bow. How do you read? Get out of my head. Get out of my brain.
I literally knew you were going to say that because I clocked it the other day too and I was like, damn it, I can't believe we forgot about that. And then when you said it, I was like, I know what she's going to say.
This is going to be 512 episodes of Life Uncut, which I want it on record. I'm not consistent at anything in life. Like I've not done 500 of anything. Usually I do it for 2 weeks, never form a habit, and then I forget about it. But I did 512 episodes. I mean, we're also there, Britt. We did it together. But like this to me is a true achievement. That's 4.5 years of us talking nonstop.
I have done 500 binge sessions of Netflix. Like I've solidly done that 100%. That's probably the only thing I've properly committed to. But no, this is by far, including relationships, the biggest commitment of my life. I've never had a commitment so long. You've been the longest relationship I think I've ever had.
Like I don't even think I've had 500 sex sessions with the same person. Not even with Matt.
Well, no, you do one a week. So if you times that 52 times 6, nah, you're not even close.
One a week? I mean, I did for the first year and a half, then we got pregnant. Now I don't do that many. Okay, wait. Keeshia just did the maths. If I had had sex every week for the 8 years that Matt and I have been together, 7.5, it would be 416 times. And I can guarantee you we have not had sex every week for the past 7.5 years. So I have done more podcasting than sexing, which is very sad for him.
How do you think he'll feel about that? That you and I have talked about sex more than you and he have had sex? It'd be devoed.
To be fair, at the very beginning when we first started this podcast, he used to get a bit upset. He used to be like, you speak to Britt more than you speak to me. Now he just accepts it. He never says that anymore. But at the start, you were the third wedge in our relationship that was keeping us apart. And I think we've definitely done more hours of talking about it, which means that I'm less of an expert. So if I'm ever talking about sex, guys, just know I don't know what I'm talking about. I've just read the books.
We're not actually supposed to tell anyone that. Like if we are having a podcast on sex and relationships, I feel like we're supposed to be semi-well versed on the above mentioned.
Yeah, that's what my 20s was for. My 30s is for mental breakdowns and getting screamed at by my children. I don't know. I'm hoping 40s is like my renaissance. I hope I make a fucking comeback by then.
Do you know how many people say, and I don't know actually, I think every decade says this, but so many people say that they felt like life got the best that it has ever been in the 40s decade. But I feel like everyone just says that to make themselves feel better. Like when you're in your teens and you hit your 20s, you're like, fuck yeah, 20s is sick. And then when you're 30, you're like, 30's not so bad. I'm great. I've got money. I'm like, I can do stuff now. And then when you hit 40, everyone's like, oh no, I'm so much wiser now. Like this is my decade.
I disagree. I look back on my 20s and I think at the time, I wanted them to be great. Like I did all the things. I went and eat, pray, loved, and I had lots of boyfriends, not simultaneously, actually sometimes simultaneously. But you know, I did all the things that you do in your 20s that's meant to be really fun. I partied hard. I tried, I experimented. And then I look back on my 20s and I go, wow, I was so insecure. I was so not sure of who I was as a person, which I know is just the standard coming of age. And I was just not confident, I don't think. And then I think about my 30s now and I'm like, these are definitely the best years of my life, like for many, many reasons. My thought about my 40s is that maybe by then you just give less fucks. Like you know who you are as a person. You're better at saying no to stuff. You're better at prioritizing. Maybe you don't have little kids who are constantly screaming at you. Not that I'm wishing these years away, but after the weekend I just had, sometimes I'm wishing these years away. But yeah, I think maybe your 40s is just a time where you're more accepting. And the other thing is that we spend our entire life in our 20s and 30s being told that getting old sucks. Like we get told that, oh my God, you like, oh, 40, how do you feel about turning 40? And let me say, 40 is still a little way away for the both of us, but I think it's been made to feel like it's very scary. And so for a lot of people who I know who are already there, they're like, oh wow, nothing bad happened. It was just another birthday and life is just pretty good. So yeah, I don't think it has to be this big thing that we all make it out to be.
From what you said to me, Laura and I had a conversation earlier on the phone. Like, I feel like there's a part of me that thinks that you can't wait to be that age purely because your kid's going to be at school. They're not going to be at home having tantrums because it sounds like you had the weekend from hell.
No, and then I feel bad about this because anytime I complain about my kids, I also, and this is the thing that most mums experience, I think, I simultaneously know how grateful I am to have them and have the life that we have and to be a mum. So never do I want to complain and then not have the weighted conversation around, but I love being a mum. And I think that that's why every mum preloads any sort of complaint or any sort of like frustration with parenting with like the throwaway statement, but like, oh, you wouldn't change a thing, even though sometimes you fucking would.
Yeah, you would.
I just had a doozy of a weekend with the girls on Saturday. Sunday was amazing. Sunday was a great day. But Saturday, the kids broke me into a million pieces. And I was like, this is abuse. My children are abusing me. And I need to go to a therapist and someone should take them away and they should be disciplined, not by me. Basically, I don't know, it just started early in the morning. Everything I did, I was being screamed at. I was being screamed at because they wanted to watch TV. Then I said they couldn't watch TV. Then I was like the devil. And then and I'm talking like the throw yourself on the ground screaming, throw things at mom, hit mom, just completely unmanageable. And it started at midday and it went until 7 p.m. And at 7 p.m. when all the joy had left my body, which is why I'm wearing a really colorful shirt today, because I was like, I'll artificially induce joy. I cracked it. I absolutely cracked it. And I yelled at Marley, which I hate that I did. And I was like, Jan. So basically, in a nutshell, what happened was she was screaming about TV, which ironically, we just had a massive chat about TV on Ask Uncut on Thursday. But she was screaming and had been screaming about the TV all fucking day. And she was screaming that she wanted to watch Gabby's Dollhouse. And I was trying to get food into her. Anyway, I was like, if you just eat your dinner, you can have a treat and then you can go to bed. And she's like, fuck you, mom, in 4-year-old speak, which wasn't fuck you, but it might as well have been. And this went on. And then I was like, just have one mouthful and then you can have a treat. Anyway, it turned from me trying to get a treat into her. And then I was like, no dinner, no treat, no TV, get in the bath. And I just lost it. And then I had this big conversation with her afterwards. And I was like, do you scream at your teachers? Like, I mean, emotionally manipulated her with like, why do you want to make mummy so sad? And anyway, they know more than what you think they know. Because the next day,
of course they do.
She was an angel and she had processed the fact that, she'd really upset me and she'd pushed it too far. But they're just, like they test you in ways you never thought you'd be tested.
This is what I don't understand. I think you are completely entitled to complain about your kids. And I know that I have never heard you say anything negative without front loading and back loading with, but I love them so much and they were so good the next day. Like, you can never just complain. But the way I think about it is, if somebody else in your life kept you up all night, threw things at you, screamed at you, abused you, threw themselves on the floor in front of you in the shops, you would complain. I think you're allowed to say that, like, this is shit right now.
If someone did that, we would be giving advice on this podcast saying you should leave that relationship. Unfortunately, You can't leave your children sometimes. But no, I think it's important. One, complaining about your children, especially on a podcast, is boring. So that's not what I'm doing here. But I do think it is important that the reason why mums so often front load and back load with the throwaway statement is because it's not a throwaway statement. We know how grateful we are. We know how lucky we are to be able to be parents, to have the lives that we have, to have the children we have. And for anyone who is trying and is having their own fertility issues or their own fertility journey, it can seem so ungrateful. But even when you have something that you have always wanted, there will be days where it is fucking hard, and it is okay to talk about it. I think, everything needs to live in a balanced scale, and just because one thing exists doesn't mean it cancels out the other. There's many shades of grey in this journey that we're all on.
Exactly. I love my dog Delilah more than anything, but I
she's
still just auditioned her for dogs behaving badly because she's a brat. So I can do those things. I will put her on national television and shame her to fix her, but I still love her, and it doesn't take away from the fact that I never will regret getting her. So I feel like we're on the same page, Laura. But speaking of kids, because I don't have any, I went to Paris last minute because there was a flight for like $40.
No, it is the most unrelatable thing that anybody has ever said in their entire life. I don't have children, so I flew to fucking Paris. You are the walking meme. Have you seen it where it's like people who don't have kids are like, hey, want to go to Africa on the weekend? That's Brittany Hockley.
That is me. Because I don't have kids, I can spontaneously do something the next day if I'm free. But the best thing about, this is the thing about Australia. We're so far away from literally anything in the entire world that you can't do these little weekenders. Nothing's accessible. And even if you could, you can't afford it because it's so expensive in Australia on this little island on the other side of the universe. But in Europe, you can get flights. If you look last minute, you can get flights for like $10, $20, $30, literally. And they're like another country is an hour and a half away. So my sister Sherry and I were like, let's go to Paris because there was a cheap flight. And then when we got there, we decided to go to Disneyland because I was like, do you know what? I've never been. It's been on my bucket list and I'm all about trying to tick that bucket list.
It's the happiest place on earth.
Okay, bullshit. It's not. And that's what I want to say. I want to give you a very quick honest review of Disneyland.
This is going to be controversial and people are going to come for you. People are Disney stans.
Yes, but there's one thing I've realized on Instagram. Okay, so I have been posting, a lot of people like, give me your honest review because I want to take my family there. And these are people that are families in Australia that really genuinely want to know if it's worth saving their money and taking their family like on a European flight, then accommodation, then Disneyland. So I feel like I owe it to the listeners to give an honest opinion. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm prefacing this with I love Disney, but what I will say is, first of all, it's winter there. So it's the off season, or it's the back half of winter. It was still beautiful weather, but I did not find it as magical or as exciting or as just like otherworldly as a lot of people have said. And I had very high expectations because everyone raves about Disney, right? It's like the be all and end all. People get year-long passes and go every weekend.
With their kids.
No, without the kids. There are grown people that put capes on and just go with an annual pass. Like, they're everywhere.
Keeshia is one of these people. Keeshia she buys the headbands and I'm pretty sure her profile picture on Facebook is a picture of her with bunny ears on, mouse ears in front of a fucking Disney castle.
Okay, well, I thought that was going to be me. I thought I was going to get a selfie with Mickey Mouse. Like, I was vibing it. But I did not see one character. Not one.
Maybe are you sure it was a public holiday? What was happening over there?
Wondering if everyone got gastro. I don't know. But there was no one. So first of all, it didn't have that air of magic, and there wasn't that vibe going around. So Sherry and I were like, okay, weird. Then we were like, let's just read a blog of online of the best rides to go to, like for the adults. Because like half and half. It's like half are kids and half you think are adults. There were 3 rides that were for, quote, adults, and they were the worst rides I have ever been on. You just sat in like a log thing, like one of the roller coasters, and you just floated on some freaking water and like, woo, like a ghost came out and it was like, I reckon I was going 1 mile an hour.
Britt sitting on a log sounds like a great Saturday night.
What, sitting on a log? Oh, the good old days. My genuine review is I've never been more disappointed by something. Like I have never had a high expectation, I don't think, for anywhere or anything I've ever traveled to or anything I've ever done.
This is so extreme. This is such an extreme disappointment that you have had. But also like I think if you're going to go to Disneyland as an adult, you either like, because most people go. Like I've been to Disneyland, to LA. It was great. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. But I would love to take even to Paris one. Fucking, I'm not gonna complain if I end up in Paris and I'm taking my kids to Disneyland, even if it's shit. I'm in Paris and I'm at Disneyland. So I think I would live through the excitement of my kids. I don't think I would be sending myself off on a log ride. So I'm kind of okay with this. Keisha's been over here. She's like trying to show everyone a photo of her like cuddling Eeyore in protest of the fact that she loves Paris Disneyland.
I went 3 times in the space of a year and a half. Did you lean in? You've got to lean into the magic. You've got to do the ears on your head. You've got to make it like you're a child going to the happiest place on earth.
Keishia, it was a dumpster fire. There was no magic to lean into. If I leaned into the magic, I would have fallen over because there was nowhere to lean.
Did you go to the parade? Like the parades are amazing.
There are no parades.
There are parades.
It was like Disney was on strike.
It's less busy in the winter than it is in the summer, but I've been in the winter twice. And you also, I don't think you stayed for the fireworks at the end, which is the best bit. The fireworks at the end is the grand finale of the day at Disney.
But I'm not going to Disney to watch fireworks.
But it's amazing.
Maybe they're still on writer strike. Maybe the cartoon's on writer strike.
I reckon you didn't even go to Disneyland. I reckon you went somewhere else.
Did you get the Mickey Mouse nuggets? All the chicken nuggets are Mickey Mouse shaped.
Half the restaurants were closed. With my experience, I would never, ever tell anybody to go to Disneyland Paris. It was that bad. It was so bad. It was the worst thing I've ever paid money for.
I can't tell you how different I feel. I mean, I obviously feel different because I went 3 times in a year and a half and 2 of those times were in winter and I had the best time.
Do you know what my issue is? Okay, I've been to Disneyland, loved it, blah, blah, blah. And I lean into the magic. I'm all here for it. But I'm so stubborn as a person. I don't like being told that something is going to be. I'm like, you're setting me up for disappointment. Don't tell me that it's going to be the happiest place on earth. I will make that decision, okay? That's up to me. That's not up to you because everyone's version of happy is different.
Even on the train, you know how you get the stops on the train and they've all got different names? Even the ones for Disneyland have little pictures on them.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it the happiest place on earth. That's just a direction.
You've got to lean into the joy. You've got to lean into the dopamine that's being fed to you.
Okay, well, speaking of kids, I wanted to speak to you, Britt, and everybody else, because I would love the communal life uncut feeling on this. Robert De Niro. He is an elderly man, some might say, very successful, still killing it in his careers, as we established at the Golden Globes. But he's 80, and 80 is getting on, okay? But he's also just had a baby. So at 79 years old, he had his 7th baby to his girlfriend, Tiffany Chen. And now there's been so many articles that have come out about it last week. And we were talking about how outrageous it is to have a baby at 79 years old. Mostly because I'm so fucking tired at 37. So the thought of, I was like, retire already. Stop being an overachiever. But we were talking about this idea is whether it's selfish to have a baby that age and kind of like the moral obligation that you have when you have a baby so old. And I know that obviously Robert De Niro sits in a very different social circle to what anybody can relate to. Like the man is absolutely minted. He would have all the accessibility in the world. But is there still an issue with having a baby at 79 years?
Well, it's interesting because the first thing I thought was like 7 kids. Oh my God, I'm like right off my feet with Delilah. I don't even have a kid and I'm 35 and I'm exhausted. 7 kids, 80 years old. So his wife or girlfriend, partner, Tiffany Chen, it's actually unknown from all the research we've done. People say she's maybe 45, 46, 47, but apparently no one knows for sure, which I think is amazing. Like what an anomaly.
I love her elusiveness. I could be 45. Fucking guess.
So that's a guess, right? From what people have said. But I think it's interesting to note here that the average age of death in the USA, where he's from, for men is 77.28 years. So he has already exceeded by 3 years the average age of death. Now, I know that most people's first thought is so selfish. You are going to obviously pass away soon, which I think is a big call. Like he could live another 20 years. He could live to 100 easily. That's not for us to say. He looks like he's a healthy man. He's got the best medical, the best Medicare, the best doctors. He's obviously having a lot of sex if he's pumping out kids left, right and center. He's doing okay.
I'm amazed that because like, you know, people talk about female fertility and how that dwindles with age, but male fertility dwindles with age too. It's something that is so not talked about enough. So like kudos to him that he's still got swimmers at 79, 80 years old and the libido to go with it.
Well, I think the libido comes with a bit of extra helping hand in a little pill bottle. But the immediate thought is, okay, very selfish, because even if you live 20 years, your child's still going to be quite young and you're not able to be an active fatherly figure at 90 or 100 years old. Like, you still might be with it, but you're not out there kicking a soccer ball, really. Like, I don't know many 90 to 100-year-olds, but he's not exactly going to be shooting hoops.
No, well, I mean, also on the flip side to that, it's different because he obviously has access to all the help and all the money and everything else. So like, he's never going to be in a situation where his kids need to be his carer. But, you know, there's a potential that he's going to have a 10-year-old who's going to see his father being so elderly that he's needing to be cared for. That is definitely a very possible situation and outcome of this kind of dynamic of having children at 80 years old.
Yeah, and he also said, like, he made a point of saying, look, my partner Tiffany does most of the heavy lifting. Obviously, we're very blessed and have help as well. But I did have to check my thinking for a little bit, and I was like, hang on a minute. Of course, there's this small aspect that's a little bit selfish, but is it that bad? Because his partner, who is in her 40s, like, she wants to have a baby. She wants to raise a child, and she wanted to have a baby with him, who she loves and is her life partner for as long as that's going to be. There are plenty of people out in the world that have children on their own. They go into parenthood and motherhood and fatherhood, but on their own, you know, for whatever reason that is. And those kids grow up just fine. So I don't think at the end of the day, if a couple have made that decision to do that together and they know they're financially in a safe place, fucking go for it. I actually changed my tune once I thought about it, and I'm sort of like, I'm pretty happy for him. He's stoked. He's happy. He's got a new lease on life, he said.
I definitely, my very first thought is that it's selfish. I think that like, and also the way in which the media likes to portray these stories, because they're so sensationalized, right? It sounds so crazy. A 45-year-old woman having a baby with an 80-year-old man, like, also the age difference, the discrepancy, scandal. Also the fact that she's younger than his oldest child, scandal, you know, all of that.
Scandal, clickbait.
Yeah, we lap it up. We're sick for it. I get it. I think it's very interesting. It's so otherly. Like, most people don't have the opportunity or could even think about the idea of having a baby at 80 because they don't have the resources, the capabilities, the team around them, or the support structures, or the financial freedom to even contemplate it. Most people want to retire and just go on a holiday, on a cruise. Like, you know, those 3-year cruises that everyone just lost money on. That's what most people want to do when they hit 80, not be raising a newborn baby. But I think the thing about this, I know your point, Britt, it is interesting to me that I don't think it's as selfish as what my brain instantly goes to. The only thing, though, that I question is that there's a difference between making the choice to have a child on your own and knowing that they're going to be sans one parent. So, for example, you know, if you're a man and you're wanting to have a child, then they're not going to have a mother figure in their life. Not even that, you know, I mean, same-sex couples have children all the time. You don't have to have a mother or father figure, you know, but you're not going to have a secondary parent is what I mean. But I guess the thing that's different in this instance is that this child does have a father. They are going to create a bond with that person. They are going to create love and a parent-child intimacy. And then that child is going to go through grief very early in life, which I think is a type of pain that you would never want to impart on anyone, right? Like, I know that can happen. You could walk out of the front door and get hit by a bus tomorrow, and your kid might have to go through some sort of enormous grief that most children shouldn't have to experience. But I guess the part that's different about this is that you're going into this experience knowing that that is going to be something that child is going to experience young. So I guess it comes down to, like, how do you mitigate that? How do you have conversations around death, around the inevitable, around, like, you know, the transparency of it? Because all of that is going to come into play at some point. We're all going to die. He's just going to die sooner, which is harsh, but true.
But that's right. But you actually don't know what is going to happen in life. Like you said, like, a young, healthy person can die. We see that all the time. People leave behind small children all the time. And I'm not saying that to be morbid. I'm just saying it because it's a fact. If Tiffany was also 80 and she had eggs on ice for like 30 years and she decided to use it with a surrogacy and they were both that age, that wouldn't sit okay with me, because you know that you will be leaving that child with no parents and, you know, other family, obviously, of course there's going to be other people around. He's got 7 other kids that are of their grandparents' age. Like he's got like 50-year-old children. So that child will always have family. But I think if they were both in their 80s and knowing that, you know, life expectancy is shorter at that age, that's more selfish. But with Tiffany only being 45, I'm all for it. And there was like a quote from De Niro. He's like, the journey of raising my daughter is wondrous. It's great. Everything that I'm consumed with or worried about just goes away when I look at her. I want to be around for as long as I can just to enjoy it and enjoy her. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I know it's not going to end that well for him. He's going to pass away, but every single one of us is going to pass away. Like that is life. At the moment, he's still fighting off Chelsea Handler. Like the guy's doing okay for now.
Something that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I would be so interested to hear this from big families, like from if you're someone who was raised as like one of 7 children, one of 8 children. And I know we spoke about it with Moana Hope a couple of years ago when we interviewed her. She's one of 13 children. And the way that she described it was that there is simply not enough love to go around. When you are one of that many children, it's not possible for your parents to be able to give you the type of attention and not just love, but like the type of connectedness that kids need in order to flourish and feel valued, and also so that they don't become parentified. Now, I don't think that this is going to be the case in terms of Robert De Niro, because obviously his kids are older and a lot of them have already grown up and had their own families and whatnot. So he's almost like starting again. But I do think that sometimes for these massive, massive families, where my brain goes to is how do you manage to parent everyone? And how do you manage to give them the type of individual needs and focus that kids need?
So I can actually speak a little bit to this. My dad was the youngest of 6 children, and the 6 children are not like De Niro's kids. They're not all spread out, right? Like my grandma just pumped out 6 kids. He was the youngest, and his dad died when he was only about 11 years old. Like he was quite young. You know, he remembers that grief. He remembers him dying. He died of brain cancer. And this situation is different because of financials, but there was not enough time or energy to give it to everybody because all of a sudden my grandma was looking after 6 kids on her own in every capacity. So my dad got shipped off to a boys' school for the rest of his schooling because there's nothing else they could do. Like there was nothing to do.
Well, what I think often happens is it's the situation of like the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So the kid whichever kid is having the biggest problem, the biggest meltdown, the biggest needs, their needs are the needs that come up to the top of the list as the priority needs, right? Like they're the ones that become the focus. And so if you are just like the okay kid that goes under the radar, that doesn't, you know, make a big deal or isn't like a big problem or whatever, you're often the kid that gets missed a bit. And it's not an intentional thing, but it's just because like the hierarchy of the shit that needs to be done in that day goes down the list. And I mean, I know with my own kids, I've got 2 of them, whichever one is being like the more just more and just needs more, like they get it, you know,
whichever one is more,
they get more. And so I mean, it fascinates me. I don't say this as a criticism of people who have big families. I think everyone is entitled to make their own choices and how they want to live their lives and how they want to parent. But it fascinates me, and I'm in awe of people who look like they're doing it and seem to be juggling everything, because I always wonder how. Because I know from my own capacity, I don't think I could do that. Obviously, you know, work and finances and all that shit comes into play as well. But I do find it fascinating. And I guess the only other thing I would want to say on this whole thing is that it to me is interesting, anyone who wants to have children that late in life. And I know that we talk about female fertility a lot and there's opportunities around having kids later, but I still think there's a window. I still think there's a window of time in terms of like your physical ability. And just surely there comes a time in life where you just want to retire, not just from work, but from all the other things that come with life. Like when I'm 80, I hope I am sitting on a porch somewhere, drinking a Negroni and yelling at the kids on the street. Like I just want to be that crazy woman, and I don't care. I want 17 cats, and I hope my kids come and visit me at the nursing home. Like that's all. I want quiet. I want peace. I want to watch the sunset. That's going to be where I'm at.
Do you want to go to a nursing home, or do you want your kids to look after you?
I really don't want to go to a nursing home, but I also understand the burden of asking my kids to take care of me. I hope that I give them enough now that they will volunteer. Fuck, it's hard, right? Like you think about what you want when you're older. I just hope that I don't end up at a nursing home and no one comes visits. That's sad.
I'll visit you. We'll still be doing the podcast. Yeah, life on death's door with Britt and Laura.
Life will certainly be cut soon.
Life is about to be cut in half.
You guys know that since we started this podcast, something that I have been saying and I have been banging on about it year after year, 500 episodes deep, is that women, and this is a stereotype, I know, but I'm going to stand by it and I don't care what anyone thinks. Women who are in heterosexual relationships will want to fuck their partners if their partners clean the house. And now, what I mean by that is I mean they will want to fuck their partners more. If you come home and your partner, your husband, your boyfriend has loaded the dishwasher, he's cleaned up not just his shit, but all the shit in the house. Because what often happens, and this is a bit pointed, sorry, Matthew Johnson. Matt will put away his own clothes and he'll say, but I put away the clothes. And I'm like, no, you cleaned up after yourself. You didn't do communal cleaning. That doesn't get you laid. If you want to get laid, put the kids' clothes away. You know what? Go crazy. Put some of my clothes away sometimes. Wipe down the benches. Do things that live outside of you existing. And just be a grown-up and contribute to this house. I think that if you find a partner who shares equally in the domestic load of the household, you will want to fuck them more.
Yeah, what you're saying is if you see Matt with a bucket and a mop, he doesn't need to fill that with water because you'll fill it yourself.
That's a wet-ass puss. Yes, 100%.
That is a wet-ass mop.
If he has a bucket and a mop, other things are getting wet around this place.
And a wet-ass Laura.
Sorry, could you please clean this up? Laura's made a mess on the floor.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with this more, but also I don't think it is just heterosexual relationships. I think it's any relationship. If one person does far more in any capacity, so maybe it's the child rearing or it's the cleaning or it's the cooking. If I think in a relationship, people don't feel like it's cut down the middle and people are meeting them halfway, that they can feel low libido and like they don't want, why would you want to fuck someone that's a slob and not helping and you feel like you're doing everything? Like that's never going to happen.
And you become resentful. But the reason why I say heterosexual relationships, I do think that this is important because in same-sex relationships, the gender dynamics don't exist in the same way, right? Like we have been brought up with real gender stereotypes. Like, you know, men do the high impact jobs kind of thing. They go outside and they do the lawns or they might tidy up the garden or they might take the car down to get the car fucking serviced, whatever it is. Whereas like women have been brought up and raised to traditionally do the other domestic labors, the washing, the cleaning, the jobs that need to be done every single day consistently and to a high standard. Whereas the male orientated jobs, also stereotypes, I know guys, they are way more low impact. They don't have to be done every single day. They can be done on whatever schedule they decide that they need to be done. And I guess like that's that sort of variation. And that's why when I do talk about this, it's why I'm very specific around saying heterosexual relationships. Because I think if you're two females together, you would generally split the load in a way that is like, you know, unique to your relationship. And if you're two men together, the same sort of thing.
So where are you going with this? Did Matt put the washing away and you had the best orgasm of your life or what? What have you got to report?
To be fair, Matt did take care of the kids. Like he did everything. He did top down of the entire like list of duties that exist in our household. He did it whilst I was dying of pneumonia. And as soon as I got my breath back, I was like, I will shave downstairs for you, Matt. I will put in some effort.
You're like, wax me front and back. I'm ready.
Flip me over. I still can't breathe properly, so I'm not going to be too active, but I will lay here for you.
Don't put me face down. I can't breathe.
Actually, no. Apparently laying prone when you've got pneumonia is good for you. So I just laid on my front and got to town. Okay, no, that's not what happened. Actually, it did. But look, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a TikTok that I came across, which led me down a rabbit hole of really trying to get to the bottom of this theory. Have a listen to this.
Okay, so I just read a study about why women in relationships often want to stop having sex with their husbands, and it blew my mind. So apparently women go to the doctor and they're like, I don't know, what's wrong with me? My libido's bad. What should I do? And the doctor's like, something's wrong with your body, and does all these tests, and they don't know what's wrong. It's perimenopause or whatever. You're too stressed. Well, what they really found is that women whose husbands don't do as much domestic labor have a hormonal response that makes them not want to have sex with their husband. And the reason for this is that when women are caretaking children, their libido goes down and their caretaking goes up. It's actually a hormonal response. So when they feel their husbands are dependent on them for domestic labor, they have this response where their libido goes down and their caretaking goes up. And they feel kind of skeezed out because they're like, ew, I'm kind of having sex with someone I'm caretaking. So to quote the study, it says, the mother caregiver role that women find themselves cast in within heteronormative frameworks can cue this nurturant hormonal system which lowers desire and leads women to view dependent men's sexual overtures, talking about dependent for housework, as inappropriate, non-erotic, or even disgustful. Disgustful. So if you want to have sex with your wife, 2 more dishes.
So I listened to this TikTok, and as I said, I went down a rabbit hole, and your girl read the entire study. Now, the TikTok is not completely correct. This study, and we'll put it in the show notes if you actually want to go and read. It's like 15 pages, but you're welcome to.
Laura just feels so validated. She's like, this needs to be on the podcast, so all my feelings for the last 4 years are validated.
Some people might enjoy the facts. You might be a numbers galley, and that's okay. You can get into the data. All right, but the thing about this that I think is so interesting is that there's lots of different like hypotheses around why women's libido in heterosexual relationships often decreases. One of the things that I thought was so interesting is that the way in which they describe it is that they say often the male's libido is used as the base metric for it. So what that means is that if a woman has a higher libido, she's deemed still as the problem. Even if that high libido might match a man in another relationship, the man's sexual desires is used as the benchmark of how the libido should be in the relationship. So if she has a high sex drive, it could be that she's slutty or she's insatiable, but she's not, like, that's still deemed as like an outlier, as a problem. If she has a low libido, it's also deemed as a problem, but it's not based around her own, her own sex drive. It's based around like what is required within that relationship. And often who is setting what's required in that relationship is the male.
Yeah, you mean that that's how they can be perceived by others. So if they have a high libido, they can be perceived as like, oh, they want too much sex, they're promiscuous, they're loose, as opposed to just saying like when a man wants sex, oh, like they have a high sex drive. It's always that there's some physiological problem involved. The frustrating thing is they make it sound like when they say, oh, you have this physiological problem, like you have this problem inside of your body, so you're the issue. So should we fix that with some kind of hormonal pill? Should we give you some sort of medication? And they don't take into account in any capacity that it could be an external source, like the stress, the domestic stress that you have at home and the childbearing load. That is not taken into consideration at all. But this study has found that actually weighs in heavily to how you react with your sex drive.
Well, I think we're getting better with it. I think that this is very one-dimensional in terms of like maybe how it has been perceived in the past. I know that we've spoken to many sexologists on this podcast, and I think holistically we understand that there are so many reasons why one's libido can be affected. Yes, it could be hormonal. Yes, it could be lifestyle. Yes, it could be circumstantial. Yes, it could be because you're, married to a flog who doesn't do anything. And that's a reason why you don't want to have sex with them. There's many reasons, okay? But I guess the thing that was so interesting about this is the way in which it describes that it can be often associated as being something that lies entirely wrong with the female, that there's something wrong with you and that you need to change something. But the problem with that is that the language around that then takes any responsibility away from your male partner to have to change anything about their behavior to help bring libido into the bedroom. So instead of it being a holistic couple thing, it becomes about, well, how do I increase my libido? How do I fix this? Where really, if you're experiencing low libido in your relationship, it should be about how do we fix this? How do we make this something that we can work on together? And I think that if that's something that you have experienced in your relationship, if you're listening to this, because 40% of women actually everybody goes through ebbs and flows in their libido, but 40% of women would say that they experience low libido to a place where it's an issue in their relationships. And I do think that there will be so many people who listen to this podcast who have gone through this with their partners. Maybe they're not wanting to have sex with them at the moment and they're like, well, how do I get my libido back? But I don't think that that's just a conversation for you to have yourself. I think it's a conversation that you have to bring your partner into, and you have to talk about, okay, well, what are the things that's contributing to this? We spoke to Esther Perel a few years ago, and the thing I loved that she said is that foreplay starts the second that the last time you have sex ends. So foreplay is not about what you do in the bedroom before having sex to get lubricated. It's all those little things that you do throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout whatever period it is between the last time you had sex to now, to build intimacy with your partner. And that's a two-way street. That's not just you arriving in the bedroom being like, God, I got to have sex tonight because it's been fucking 6 days and he's expecting it, which is a terrible place to be. But we've all been there at some point.
It's interesting because what this does is put the complete responsibility onto the woman, which in turn is a form of gaslighting. It's the man literally saying, you don't provide enough for me. You're not giving me enough sexual gratification. So I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to pull away from you. I'm going to go and find what I need outside of the relationship. How many times do we hear people say that they cheat in a relationship or they're unfaithful in some capacity, micro cheating, emotional cheating, physical cheating, because they say, I don't feel like I was getting what I needed at home. Now, what that does is put this extra level of pressure and stress and guilt and shame on the woman in that relationship because she feels like she's not doing her duty to keep her husband happy, which is like ridiculous.
But also, like, no one wants to have sex with someone when they think it's a job. If you get to a point in your relationship where you're having sex because you feel like you've got to do it, which is a very problematic place to be in for many, many reasons, but that becomes work and you're already doing a lot of that. So like, why would you want to do more?
Nothing makes you dry up like the Sahara Desert quicker than someone saying, have sex with me. You have to have sex with me when you don't want to have sex with them. And then that adds to this vicious spiral and cycle of shame and guilt and stress and makes you want to have sex less. So spoiler, just pick up the shit off the floor.
Totally. I mean, I think it's so, I mean, I don't want to just like glaze over that though and say when someone makes you have sex when you don't, you know, like there's so many conversations around consent that is loaded into that. Obviously that's still a very problematic thing that people experience within their own marriages. But you guys might remember last year we did an Ask Uncut question around, it was a woman who'd recently given birth. She was only 4 weeks postpartum or 3 weeks postpartum, and her husband was saying that he wasn't feeling sexually gratified by her and she wasn't putting out, and she had 3 kids to him already. If you guys don't remember the question, we were infuriated by it. It also went viral on our Instagram. So we still are receiving comments all the time. I would say 40% of the comments on that post do not pass the vibe check. They are deeply misogynistic and problematic. And so I know that maybe we've spoken about this in a way that alludes to the fact that a lot of people are living in these relationship dynamics where they are very gender stereotyped. But I read those comments actually at the point where I think we should turn comments off, because there are so many men who exist in the world who think it is a wife's duty to have sex with them. And that became very, very fucking clear to me when I was reading through how problematic some of those comments were and how there were so many men who were like, well, tell me, did she give birth with her mouth? Why can't she give him a blowjob? And I was just sitting there fucking shaking with fury around this. And I guess the thing is, like, it's an education piece, but it's infuriating that 1, it falls on women to do, and 2, that it is such an uphill battle for so many people within their relationships to completely recondition this idea that men are entitled to it. For a lot of people, these discrepancies in their sexual desires, it doesn't become apparent until you go into a different phase of your relationship, right? Like sex doesn't become a big issue until potentially you have kids, or potentially you're married, or potentially you're cohabitating. The reason why it becomes such an issue at that point is because when you're in the honeymoon phase, everyone's fucking, you know, like everyone's having sex. You're having sex every couple of days. Maybe it's every day. Maybe it's multiple times a day. That is being satiated. And then for a lot of, you know, relationships, not everyone, of course, but for a lot of relationships, you move into another phase, you have children. There are other things that require your time, your energy, and your capacity. You're touched out. There's so many reasons. And the last thing I want to go back to about this study, which I thought was so interesting, that's what the woman touched on in the TikTok that kind of spiked my interest in the first place, is this idea about caregiving roles and how often the things that once upon a time a heterosexual male, his mum would have done for him, things like picking up his clothes, things like cooking his dinner, all the things that his mum used to do can often fall onto the wife or onto the female in that relationship to pick up those pieces. And so no one wants to have sex with someone who they're taking care of in the same way that they're taking care of their kids. This shouldn't need a research study. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone. And I know that this is obviously we've gone like for the real black and white of this. There's many shades of grey that exist in all relationships. But I do think it's so interesting that finally people are unpacking this in a way that's saying, okay, maybe it goes beyond hormones and maybe it really is the circumstances around how we're living our lives, how our relationship dynamics take place, that's actually contributing to the reason why women seem to have this severe drop in libido, especially after kids are in the picture.
Well, it's time for our accidentally unfiltered, our embarrassing story, where you guys write in literally those moments where you want to dig a hole and die in it and cover yourself again. That's what we want to hear. Your deepest, darkest, most embarrassing moment. I have a good one today that I think you can relate to, Laura. I was sleeping with this guy for the second time after we slept together on New Year's Eve. It was getting pretty hot and heavy, but midway through, I sat up and I looked at him. And he had a couple of really big boogies hanging out of his nose. Now, this was only the second time seeing him, so I didn't want to embarrass him and point them out. So I just sort of had to pretend like they weren't there. I closed my eyes, we went back to kissing, and I'm about 95% sure I ate his boogies. I feel so uncomfortable about this and so yuck to this day. Laura, this is you reincarnate. Like, this is you.
sick.
If I had a booger on my face right now and I did this whole podcast episode knowing we were going to put it on YouTube, you wouldn't tell me. You wouldn't. You're a bitch.
I wouldn't tell you. Okay, I wouldn't tell you. This is not a secret. I feel uncomfortable about people having things on their faces. It doesn't bother me, but like the having to tell them that they have something on their face, I just avoid it. But I'm not gonna eat his snot. I'm not gonna rub my. If a man had, I feel sick. No, I'm just thinking about the logistics of this. Imagine making out. You suck it in. Do you stop and pick it out and say like, this is yours?
No.
Have you ever like made out with a guy and he's pushed his chewing gum into your mouth?
Ew, what? How old are you, 12? Who is pushing the chewing gum into your mouth?
I fucking hate chewing gum. This might not come as a surprise to you. It repulses me. I find it vile. I have a phobia of chewing gum. Put it on the record. I hate the shit. I have made out with a guy and he has pushed his chewing gum into my mouth and I felt violated. Maybe this is why I have a phobia. Maybe this is where it's come from. It's come from Bradley Thomas. He fucking shoved a chewing gum in my mouth when I was 17 years old.
This explains a lot. If you were making out with people that are putting chewing gum in your mouth, it explains a lot of your relationship issues. But let's just scoot back because you just scooted over it a little bit too quick.
I feel sick.
I get that maybe occasionally, actually I don't even get it, but I'll let it slide. If I had something in my teeth, like a little bit of parsley and you didn't tell me, if I had a giant booger on my face and you didn't tell me, that would be relationship ending for me.
I would tell you, if you had a massive booger, it's only when it's something that's like there but kind of in like discreet. Like, you know, if you've got a bit of mascara, like I don't care, so I'm not going to tell you. But if you had a huge booger, I would care about that because that's gross and I don't want to look at it. So I'd be like, could you please sort yourself out, you pig? But if I was fucking a guy and he had it dripping down his face, like I'm just never going to be that into the sex that I'm not going to tell him. Do you know what I mean? Like, for some people, everyone has different things. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're into booger kink. I don't know. I don't care. But there is nothing about that would mean that I could proceed.
No, I just actually put myself in that. I just like took myself there visually and I nearly vomited. If I was making out with somebody and somehow a booger dropped down their face into my mouth, I don't even know how that happens because you don't make out with someone's nose. If I was making out and a booger went in my mouth, I would hands down stop and say, your booger's in my fucking mouth. I would say that. I'd be like, get your booger out of my mouth now. That's not something you let slide. No.
Can I? Okay, this is just taking a weird turn, but I'm going to go there. Remember when you were a kid and someone would, like an older person, you know, maybe it was a nana or your mum or someone, you know, usually a relative, would come to get something off your face and they would spit on a hanky to do it, like lick a hanky? That is not okay. Like that is so not okay. It is so violating of a child's boundaries. I will never forget my nan being like, come here, love, and licking a hanky and then wiping her saliva on my face to get something off. I'm like, in what generation was that fine?
Okay, I'm going to top you. I don't want a story top, but strap in, kids.
You're like, my nanny used to piss on a hanky and wipe my face. Sorry, do that.
No, strap in. My dad
pissed on a hanky and wiped my face. I've been going to therapy for a long time.
When we were kids, we did this big trip around Australia, right? In a camper van, like 4 little kids, mum and dad in this camper. I'm talking like raw dog in it. We sat in a bucket to bathe every night. It was like, I look back and it was amazing.
Please never use your dad and the word raw dogging in the same sentence ever again.
But I'm talking like, I grew up camping, right? So I'm talking when you had to go and do a poop, you just take a shovel and go and dig a hole in the desert. You'd squat and do your poo and fill it in. Like that was my upbringing. It's probably why I was such a tomboy. And like, anyway, because we were in the desert, facilities were low. When there was a sandstorm, which happened often, and we got sand or dust in our eye, the only way to get it out, because you didn't want to waste water because the next water could be days away, my dad would hold our eye open and come to get the dust out and lick it out with his tongue. He'd put his tongue in our eyeball.
I'm violated. We need to go. This is not okay.
Okay, before we wrap up for the episode, we have our suck and our sweet, our highlight and our low light from the week. Laura, what is your suck this week?
My suck. Well, I mean, I already covered my suck. My suck was like the kids screaming at me. But if I have to find another suck, because I feel like I can't double up on content here. So our car has broken, which it's only 3 years old. But basically, we were driving around the other day and I thought the kids' water bottles must have come loose and that the water must have gotten into the carpet from their water bottles. It has been happening quite consistently and I got kind of annoyed at Max. I was like, you've got to pick up their water bottles. Anyway, turns out the water is actually coming up through the floor of the car. So the carpets in the car is saturated. There's something wrong with the air conditioner. And now, as of this morning, we are without a car. So that's very annoying. Also, it's going to be very costly because it's been going on for so long that now the car kind of stinks of mold and they're going to have to replace carpets, blah, 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 blah. So that's my suck for the week. My sweet for the week, which sounds like a very dumb sweet, but I'm excited about it. I have not gotten rid of this cough since having pneumonia, and Keeshia is doing an excellent job of editing out my intermittent coughing fits that I'm having. So I've just started a steroid treatment, which sounds like a stupid sweet, but it actually has helped so much in the last couple of days. I can't even tell you. So I'm on steroids. I'm going to be so big, so buff.
You're going to be jacked.
I'm going to be such a jacked, better version of myself, but it's actually fixing me. And I feel like the last 2 days has been the healthiest that I have felt since January, because 2024 has been the year of sickness thus far, not the year of health. And so I'm ready for a reboot.
I never thought I'd hear the day that you'd say you're sweet as steroids. My suck this week is that I actually don't have one. Like I just feel like I can't complain right now. I'm with Ben. Like obviously we're back at work, so
your suck
just
is
so
me.
you guys know. No, but with the time difference, I start work at 9 p.m. and I work until 5 a.m. So like I am still over here working. It's not a holiday, but I don't have anything to complain about because I'm with Ben. My sister's over here and I just genuinely am really happy with my life at the moment. So I'm breaking all the rules and I'm not doing a suck, Laura. You can't make me.
It's okay. I'm happy to be your suck. I'm happy to be the reason that you don't want to get up in the morning / nighttime. I'm happy to be the reason that you stay awake all night. Put it that way.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. It's definitely not Ben keeping me up. It's you.
All right, guys. Well, that is it from us. If you've loved the episode, you can jump onto Apple Review and leave a little sneaky review, or you can subscribe to the podcast so that it's always in your feed and you know the drill.
Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends, and share the love because
we love love.